Welcome back. Welcome back, y'all. It's this Love and Worship podcast with your friend, your host, and your buddy, Kingsley Kase, the family guy. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. All right, look, last week we were on, we were just going, and I came off of the course of life, and I didn't address like chapter 5 that I wanted to talk about. And so we're going to talk about chapter 5 in this course of life and just telling you about this journey, And I just want to be very honest, very truthful, and just open and leave it on the floor and let you decide. There's some things coming up. I dropped a new book. We'll talk about the new book that I just dropped. We'll talk about another another project I'm working on. We'll talk about some things that have been an article I've written. We'll talk about some other things we address and just what it's like to serve youths, young adults, children, and young people's ministries, and how more impactful is be when you're in the field, but also when God calls you to now work on other items that you got to pull away and work on those items. You got to polish up yourself. You got to get poured into. You got to grow, because the next season that's going to really you're going to come into is now you're going to be pouring out, and you might not have the sufficient time that is allotted to you to really prepare, because at the end of February, everything is full throttle from March straight on into next year, March, or next year, April. So you basically might not have another opportunity until like next year, January, to prepare again. And you don't want to be that guy or that lady. You want to be that person that's in a position of power and influence and authority. So let's talk more about it. Check it when we get back, okay? Welcome back. You guys know that one. Welcome back to Love and Worship Podcast with your host, Kingsley Kase. Hey, I love doing these podcasts and sharing just a little bit of information. One of the things to try not to do in the podcast is like use so many big words that as beautiful as that may be, I try not to do that simply because when you get into sharing something that's potent, I think is if it's simplified enough that people can gather it. Not saying that people are not educated whether they can actually gather information or use information or how you process it. Everyone is different. And I figured that, hey, if I simplify this and keep it in context but have complexities in there, I think everybody would be satisfied. And that's the same way I thought about it when I was writing chapter 5. And I literally was looking for a title. And the first title I had was Walking by Faith and Not by Sight. And I thought about that. I was like, man, it's so generic. And, everyone uses that and stuff like that. And I thought about the message that our associate pastor taught during going into the new year. And she used just a message on the road with Jesus. And it was like my life story was just right in front of me. I was already working on this. I already had that written down. It was sitting there, literally sitting there on the road with Jesus was like a part of my life story. This is just really something I've really spoken about. I've never really put it out there as much. But that was potent. It was sharp, and it was like God calling me to really address that. And so now we're in chapter 5, and it does really deal with the fact that in our physical being, and I will address that in my other book. There's another book that I'm going to be releasing. I can't give you the scoops on that right now, but there's another book that I'm going to be releasing that talks about what it's like to journey when you have physical demands, physical needs that are truly a dire situation, that in order for you to really move on, in order for you to come out of this without trauma, without this a setback, without confusion, without just losing your faith, losing the desire to look up in heaven and say, God, I love you so much. I worship you in spite of what's going on. And the reality is Sometimes you have to check yourself. But that's why I wrote chapter 5 in the course of life. And in my eyes, I talk about that on a personal level of what it means to literally journey. And most people try to colorful, make it all colorful and talk about all this stuff. I kind of just, I'm in my other book, I get really gritty and really down in depth about it. And yeah, I use some big words there, but in this portion of my life, I am addressing the stigmatisms that we're dealing with. The fact that there are some people when they come into faith as babes, we tend to be more green, more gullible. We're excited for everything and anything that happens. Jesus this, Jesus that, Jesus this, Jesus that. But when the going gets tough and now you realize that you are literally serving in ministry, you are literally serving in ministry and you're operating consistently, but then you realize that you remember when you weren't operating consistently. You remember when the ministry was calling you and asking you to come back, but you were so distant and combobulated because you had all your personal things going on and you felt like the ministry couldn't relate to that. And one of the things I kind of touch on this topic, which is, I hope it encourages you, is that we're people first. Um, a lot of people point the other direction to say we're Christians first, but Christianity, a lot of people don't really know where, though. People talk about you are the Christ. Imagine how many um, uh, pagan gods were called Christ. I mean, how many persons were Jesus? How many prophets were named Jesus back in the day? Because and how many people had said the Messiah had come, and those messiahs were crucified. If you really study, if you want people, I'd never really truly try to get into that debate or that conversation with persons who haven't reviewed that portion of history. This is where the Christianity, your journey sometimes becomes very skewed because you're not well studied. And I'm not talking about you have to go and like someone say you have to do as kings do. When you sit at the table with kings, you have to do as what they do. And I'm like, I think the whole point of standing strong in your faith, that if it came down to if that king was going against what questions your faith and your morals and where you are and where you stand in your faith, you would stand up and say, no, I am not going to participate in this, whether that means your head getting cut off or not. But the reality is, how many people are going to do that when they're actually placed in that situation, when they learn about the rules and they learn about the societies that built them, the same way a society built the name Christ. Christ's name was not developed. That was not a magical name that Jesus just got adorned to. Christ, this name was around. This is just a part of like Roman history. This is used in that form, and that's a Roman language, and so the whole thing of Christian, and if you dig really deep into it and people talk, well, you are the Christ, well, where did that really derive from? Really study that. And you won't really get that from everything. And if you go deeper into apologetics, which I did to study all this stuff in school and also I was pretty good with theology and all that other stuff, but I was pretty good with it because my life, I'm a PK. I have a dad who's a pastor, my mom is an evangelist. I grew up in church, so as a church kid, I should be okay or good with churching. And most people don't understand, like, you're built in an environment, so you should be good with churching, and you would prefer churching because that's an environment that you were raised in. But now when it comes to questions that are refutable, that, challenge you and your growth and puts you in a state where you have to really get to a place, not to defend. See, a lot of people get into this whole defensive category. I think it's more of presenting an argument and presenting an argument that is going to lead people to a perspective that will win their souls and cause people to want now to participate, because now you present an argument that was not based upon your prejudice against another religion, not based upon your what you were told and what you were raised on, but now this is based upon your informed living, like how you live as a person. I'll use an example. Number thing is like it's being like a publicly exposed person, and I think I've addressed this in one of the other podcast. When you're a publicly exposed person, if you're a pep, you're a politician, you're something where you're a CEO of a company or something like that, something where you're going to be audited. You're a minister or pastor for a senior pastor of a church or whatever. You're going to be audited. People are going to look at your decision making and how that works. You're a youth leader. You're the treasurer. So there's a team of people that are going to look at. Every year, someone's going to be looking at your work, or people are going to looking for you, but to give them an account and give them reports, or quarterly reports, or monthly reports. And if you work for a company where you work in administration, you have a daily report because you gotta bookkeep. Bookkeeping is huge. So imagine you taking a position. You're taking a position. You coming with one side of the information where you're bookkeeping on all the things Bible, bookkeeping on everything you've learned, bookkeeping on everything you love about the Bible because you're only about this. And now you're finally faced with someone approaching you with a real argument. They're approaching you with a real argument to present something to you, an information that can give you more insight on what the Bible is actually saying and how the Bible was describing the history of man, the history of relations, the history of society. But you refute it because some of the events that you're reading, you're looking at those as literal events outside of an identity, describe something that's pulling away from another thing to building it. And when you look at the history of where things were founded, how the Bible was written, when the Bible was written, from when other things were written in the other historical tablets that do exist and stones that do exist that tell history, what we know about Babylon and other things that come. You really you get to the point now that my journey on this road is complicated. we get the selling point that it's beautiful, it's awesome, it's amazing, and I will tell you this, and this is something I learned a long time ago. There are people who live in this world who experience excellence. Their life journey is beautiful. They've never faced true hardships, but they've seen the hardships around the world, and their hearts go out to those people who are experiencing. But the way that they're built, my perspective in that, or opinion or speculation, is that God does not put on us what we can bear, or the way we're built. We're built to handle what we can. Our infrastructure, our development of our brains, what they can handle. Not saying that they have a low capacity. I'm not talking about low capacity to high capacity now. We did that in the last episode. I'm talking about building relationships with people who are different from you, understanding them, and getting into a place now where an argument is presented, and both of you take that argument with clean hearts, cooler minds, and you try to prevail on either side. You come to some sort of conclusion and a commitment to truth that you won't waver from that truth regardless of what's presented to you. And I think that's the standard when you're talking about journeying on the road of faith. When you're journeying on the road of faith, most people just take the one side, which means that the one side that if I have faith, as strong as a mountain sea, I can say to this mountain, be there. But what happens when you're saying to that mountain to be thou removed, and you have faith as strong as a mustard seed, and you look at your life and you look at everything that you've been through, everything that you've gone through, everything that you're pushing past, everything you're trying to accomplish, and that faith is knocking at your door, and you feel like this someone is laughing over your shoulder. You feel like every time you walk out of your house and someone's calling you a failure or something like that, you didn't make it, or whatever the case may be, you feel like you lost the argument because they're saying to you, well, then why are you broke if you have so much faith? Then why are you not president or prime minister of this country if you have so much faith? Why are you still single? If you have so much faith that God is going to provide and do what he's going to do, why are you still single? And the truth is, you can go to scripture all you want, but the reality is you're still single. That's the reality. The reality is you're not answering the question of your feelings in that, and because if you want to answer your questions and the feelings and answer those questions, you're getting to the emotionally intelligent kind of phase, and then you're pulling from areas in your life that you're hoping that people will understand. But it's not necessarily a step down. The thing is, sometimes you want to step up. You want to step up from where you were so that you can grow. But you're not going to grow staying behind that wall and saying, oh, I don't care what anybody says. I'm good where I'm at. I am satisfied, everything God. And I'll tell you, my friend, I am not. Because let me tell you, and I have my reasonings. On the road with Jesus, it's the journey where you're walking on the road and you're now understanding that we're here and we're moving forward, and you're experiencing everything that comes with it. I'm doing the music thing. I'm facing trials that artists face, and it's the truth is it's what artists face. I'm building relaunching is not easy. Did it started in 23, but it's not easy. It's not easy. You take your hits, you get rebuked by some amazing people. You go through rough patches where you are way ahead of the group you're serving, but at the same time you realize that in order to be a good leader, you still got to help develop them too. You can't always shine. You can't always be the one to help it get over to the next side. You can't be that. And you realize that if you keep on being, now you become an Achilles heel, because if anything happens to you, they go back to the dark ages, and that's not how it should be. Which means now you need to develop, you need to encourage, you need to keep on giving an answer and telling persons like, hey, look, don't worry about this. um Encourage them, educate them about the situations that are happening in services, why certain things are being disrupted, or why certain things are going to sleep, or what the error is, or what could have possibly happened, and sometimes why it happens, or whatever the case may be. And then tell them the truth. Hey, look, sometimes there's no possible information to why certain things happen, but you just got to be honest and prepare them for what you're working on at a time. But answering the questions that they need answered, you got to be willing to admit when you don't know the answer. But you go to the argument. The argument is, you're asking me this question because you want to dismantle my belief in God, my belief in why I believe in God, my belief in who I'm saying God is. But when I'm breaking down certain things in my book, I'm talking about the walk itself is not easy. People truly go through some serious trauma, and while they're going through those traumas, there's not always an answer. There's not always an answer. And we try to purple it up or whatever the case may be, but sometimes all you could do is call that friend to come over, or have a little social or something like that, and try to laugh. And when you laugh, sometimes y'all all end up crying because the situation is not not pleasant. It's that bad of a situation where you're unable to express in terms of words, you're unable to express in terms of actions, and you realize no amount of gifts can heal such a broken wound. And you knew that it's going to take time, but you spending time with them, you being there in the midst of that, whatever they're going through, whatever they're facing, and trying to help them along the way, it means something. It means that you're fighting, you're taking the fight, that you're not afraid, that you're unafraid, and that you're willing to stand unashamed, regardless of whatever happened in your past. Whatever someone's gonna come up and say, "Why do you? Oh, I remember when you used to be a hot girl, or you used to be a hot boy. How you could talk to me about Jesus?" And how I would tell you, first start with who you are, where you've been, and what you came out of, and how you came out of it. Most people don't really understand why some people have a love and a passion for the gospel. And what they have to realize is that most people don't like sad stories. This is the truth. Most people do not like sad stories. Have you ever watched a drama series? Most people love drama, but they do not love unhappy endings. And and if there's and but the reality is, it what keeps them watching is the unhappy ending of a season. That season ended unhappy. So now they're fed up because they thought there were going to be some sort of results that were going to propel them and give them some divine insight on why they do the things they do in this human world. And Deacon Macaulay, the family and the church family was talking today. He taught today on men's ministry, and it's powerful teaching he shared, and he's talking about he that overcome it. And when you're on the road with Jesus, which is chapter 5 is about, that journey, I'm not going to give you guys all the secrets in the book. I'm just telling you just part, talking about the book and sharing a little nuggets from the journey. But when he shared about overcome it, he that overcome it, and also using Revelations 3 and 5, I just, I felt, I just felt this immersed, like this huge, like handshake, like a firm handshake. I just felt like a firm handshake, touching my hands, holding it, and saying, "Hey, you hang in there. You, whatever you think that you're not doing sufficiently, keep pushing. You knowing that I knowing that I'm in a fragile state with some relationships in my life, which means when I say that, I say that to say that it's a fragile state because now they have to decide to make decisions to grow and advance. I can't do it for them at that stage. And it's going to become much harder for them because now I'm getting pulled in other directions that are now pushing me to pour into other people who also need the same attention that I gave to this one individual. And sometimes it be like that, and people who are used to that good, sweet, loving, and amazing treatment, they still want that same 1,000% that you were given, not realizing that 1,000% was for a season. Now you only could give them 100, and even though the 100% is more than most people get in a lifetime from people who are supposed to be supporting them and helping them and leading them, what happens is that because they're so used to that 1,000% and didn't know that it was 1,000%, when the relationship starts shifting to now, I have to prepare my focus, and God is leading me to this to push this person, and now I have to finish these projects that God has put in my spirit to, and for me to download, I got to do all these things. When you get to that stage, that's when it becomes very fragile because it's honestly how you do it. Because you have to let them know, and you have to also inform them, hey, look, now we're at a stage and Now you have to be prepared to take stances on certain things. Now you have to be prepared to make certain moves. I am still going to be there with you, but not in the way that you think I am. And this is where they have to depend on the God that's inside of them and not looking at this physical manifestation all the time and this external reap of rewards. And I think that's where self gratification kind of gets us a little trippy. But not trying to push away from that too much, but the he that overcome it is something that is remarkable because it shows you that you were not built to be. So there's a lot of things in that. I mean, the other book I'm writing right now, when that's released, that will bring some clarities. I present my goal in that is present this as an outreach so that when people look at that argument that I'm presenting, they take a realistic approach and a check. Like they really check on themselves. Because are we really doing that? Because I have young adults in the ministry. I love all of them equally. But they don't know that I love all of them equally. They don't know that the struggle and having to love all of them equally means that sometimes I will miss one person and it's not intentional. I will not be able to call this one person every single week because of the demands that not only that I have in my personal life, that I have with the ministry, that I also have with the youths, and I also have other things going on where the community reaches out to me. And so I am not forgetting them. I do remember them. But the thing is, if I make a call to them, I call them, I check upon them, reach out, I send them a word of encouragement, and I don't get any response. Should I stop? No, I'm not going to stop. They think I'm going to stop, but I'm not going to stop. They think I stop when they don't see something for me in a while, not realizing that if they were with me, then they would realize that, man, Kingsley's been constantly going. Like he's been utilizing his time. I sleep about 3 to 5 hours a day. Literally. I literally sleep about 3 to 5 hours a day because I am at a stage in my life. If I'm not rising up at 5 a.m. in the morning, I'm going to bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. If I'm not rising up that time, I'm going to bed around that time. So people think I'm just getting up at 11 a.m. just because I want to get up at 11 a.m. When you're an entrepreneur and you work for yourself and you have to get certain things done or make a podcast, you got to edit it, you got to post it up. And then after that, you still have other things to prepare for, ministries and stuff like that you got to prepare for. You have other things that people hope that you would also help them with and help them participate with. You got to be creative for a playlist. And then you have these other projects with the artists that you're trying to promote, and you're still trying to push for the album. So you still got to go over the songs. You still got to make time to practice those songs. You still got to make sure your hands are in check. And then you also got to take a look at Sunday. You shared ministry on Sunday, and then take a revamp on Sunday and see what areas where you could have improved or where someone might have felt slighted by the way you ministered or you interrupted what they assume was supposed to be for them to break through or for them to get a release and for them to get seen. So it's a lot of things like that you have to be so, I guess, present with, because when you're not present, not saying that you're thinking on the past all the time and what's behind you. I'm asking for you to take steps that are going to impact your future. And the only way you're going to take those steps to impact your future and moving forward, it starts with you being open and honest. My friends, honesty and openness is the key to excellence. Honesty and openness is the key to excellence. We were talking about, a PEP, publicly exposed person. Those persons, if they're not honest in their due diligence and the way they operate and stuff like that, they're already publicly exposed. So what do they expect when stuff starts happening to them and things start coming out about them? Are they going to be like, oh, this person's going to control the universe or whatever the case, and the truth is coming out? No, it is really what it is. And then as believers, if we saying we don't want anything like that to exist in the world, then we're lying to ourselves because we just say that something like that exists in the world. We're saying the Holy Spirit, God knows everything. He sees all and everything that we do. So if we're really truthful in addressing that, then God is the super AI. He's been the super AI. He's been in control of everything. He's seen all and knew all from the get-go. And for people who try to invent these other aspects of what they assume is going to happen in the near future or whatever the case may be, the truth is what people fail to realize, we were being watched from the 1980s. And I would say that intelligence started becoming more informed in the 1990s. And then in 2000, it was ready taken off. AT&T, I mean, we don't even know about all those contracts. But the truth is, if they wanted information on you, they didn't have to plant bugs into your homes. You know, the people who they plant bugs into their homes in and try to get, those mic calls or something like that and put those pens and whatever else inside your house just to see what you're saying and to hear what you're saying and get these certain recordings and information and all. The people who do that, and I'm telling you just right now, the people who do that, they're not using advanced technology. What that was is what used to be available back then, what those guys used back then. Now it's publicly. It's on the if you can buy it from Amazon, if you can buy it online, it's not the state of the art most advanced equipment that exists. That should tell you that. That means that there is surveillance that's out there now, and if we're saying to ourselves, "Oh, in the future, then it's going to control X, Y, Z." Look at the Bible's design. Look at every religion that's ever been designed. Look at structure of society, the designs of structure of the society. There's always been someone pulling the strings. Always someone pulling the strings. There's always someone that's implemented structure. Most people might not like it, but the Latin version did not describe gay marriage or gay and lesbian behavioral actions. It described the actual lifestyle, and when that interpretation came forward, the interpretation used the word homosexuals in some translations, which I found that very frowned upon that they would even put that there. And I found it very frowned upon that they would even use that to describe the lifestyle of, instead of calling the person that, hey, they're love of men, which is the Bible described. And later years, church folks thought it would be cool to use the word that would describe it as, to make it seem very horrific and very phobic like. And if you look at most of how things have been reinterpreted, rewritten, redesigned, it is still very consistent with systems that are built with someone pulling the strings and someone controlling a narrative. I won't get deep into that with any of you right now because a lot of people would be like, "Oh my God, no. That's over your head." If you stop listening at this point, it's over your head. And I try not to get to that point because a lot of people are not willing to stand with me and for us to actually not hash out an argument, for us to have a discussion on an argument, to address these things. One of the arguments, and I'm not going to really get into this deeply because that's a part of another project I'm working on. But in the course of life, with chapter 5, and we're diving into the road on the road with Jesus, you're still moving forward, and there are stages when you will stop for rest. There are stages where you do need food, you need sustenance to survive, you need someone to come there and bail you out to give you some sort of food, and sometimes someone might be passing you by on that road and they're speeding by, they're flying by, or maybe you're the driver and you've broken down, and then on the way, somebody stops and gives you a jump and helps you change your tires, and you get back on the road, and for some odd reason, instantly you totally forgot something that you left behind, and you want to turn back and go back to go grab this one thing, but you're destined, which now puts you back because time is still moving forward, but you're going back for something. Now you still have to turn back around once you've grabbed this thing and get back on the road and journey again. And along the way, you're intimidated to pick up hitchhikers. You know, you're terrified about getting pulled over, or being stopped, or something happened to you along the way. All the plans that people will describe as the enemy plan to sabotage you and stuff like that. And the more we step forward, and we have to ask ourselves these questions, and a lot of people keep on, and I think this is one of the hardest thing is people always use that line, "You are a Christian," and they still don't understand why I do say I am a Christian, but I do have, I have my reservations on why I don't like being called that, because it just goes back to the whole Roman systems that were in place to box, now create this, mandatory form of order, um, that would set everyone in this one line, and if this system worked really well, then all of us would operate in that system. And the fact that Christianity started to catch on so well into Rome made it an okay religion many years later, after all the persecutions and everything. They said freedom religion in Rome, you know what I'm saying? And then they had all kind of stuff going on. But it was the same according to their predecessors that was happening. And Christianity started to spread because of those freedoms, and the persecution shifted, and you had different religious leaders who started to understand that rule of leadership and the process of those systems were also helpful for keeping people subject to policy, to governance, and that's a whole deeper talk. I don't want to get into that because a lot of that plays into the whole, you say I say until I have evidence to back it up, or whatever the case may be. And then there's not enough evidence. And a lot of people always say, "Oh, this is evidence," and I'm like, "Have you proven that?" You know. And what people fail to understand is when we call the great falling away, and people got to understand what that is. And I dig into that. And because I've just come to this understanding. And people who don't understand what the great falling away means, that something was hidden, and now it's revealed. And the message today was so spot on, that what's been hidden has been hidden in plain sight all this time. We're looking at it, we're seeing it, and we're saying it ain't so, it ain't so, it ain't so. But I told somebody the other day, because they always try to use this whole antichrist narrative and all this other stuff, and I kept on saying, I said, where Show me where in scripture where it says that the antichrist would be hated. Show me where in scripture where it says that people would not be deceived. They would reject him. They would hate him. You will have global fallout. Where does it say that? It does not say that. And that's where that's where people have this messed up identity of not really knowing truth. And you have to really understand what's happening right now. A lot of the things that we've been given historically has explained the buildup of society and what happens when that society falls. And people who've had visions like John and Patmos, most people don't, you know, want to talk about that in Revelations and the whole Revelations. But the codes that are in there, the imagery that's in there, the guidance that's in there, and then some of the stuff is a little on edge, far as like, how does it fit or whatever. And then some of it is like this missing thing, like it's just not a consistency. It's like, is this whole, oh, we're gonna be in heaven and there's gonna be this great multitude and multitudes upon multitudes. I'm like, oh, then now he's a loving God. And then, oh, then there's hell, fire and brimstone. Earth is gonna be destroyed and people are gonna be slaughtered. I was like, man, what is this out of? Is this out of some sort of archaic dynasty or some sort of Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing type movie? I mean, because when you have to look at everything in depthly, but here's the thing. That's what on the road with Jesus is like. On the road with Jesus is like, it's messy. And everyone wants to sell you this beautiful picture and, oh man, come into the kingdom, come into the kingdom, come into the kingdom, come into the kingdom. But like, people are saying, come into the kingdom, leave your messes behind. And then the people get there, and now they find out that it's messy. Everybody has a mess. There's messes all over the place. The people who are just trying their hardest, trying to improve and do life in a new way. And it's not easy for them to do life, the way that they want to do life, And then you have patients who love doing life. They're excited about doing life. They have the perspective that just the fact that they have it, they should be grateful. And that's all that they need. And they keep on getting more and more and more. And they maintain that whole, I'm going to consistently be this person who's grateful for the fact that I'm able to do life. And then you have other persons who are struggling with that concept of saying, I can be faithful on this walk. I can do life. I can do this. And then they go through losses after losses, after losses, after losses. I mean, how long did Jacob have to wait for Rachel? How long did oh my goodness. How long did Joseph have to wait behind bars? Or how long was he in bondage for? Most people never really thought about that. How long was the Hebrew nation in bondage in Egypt for? You know? How long was the earth covered in this great flood for? And there are many, 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 many records that have been uncovered. And then there's it's so crazy and so nuts that the serpent and anyways, I'm not gonna go there because if I go there, then I'm gonna have my believer friends and leaders probably breathing down my throat on this right now. And I don't want to present that episode until I'm ready to present that episode. I just I just want people to know that you have to know the God within. You have to know the God within. You don't know God within you, and you're not able to say yes to that and believe that and trust that. Problem what you're gonna end up facing is that you're always going to school to be taught something, which means that at some point you're still not at a place where the things that you're being a part of, the lessons you're being a part of, you're being taught and propelled not from a perspective of students of my ideology, but students of research, and we're having these arguments or conversations that are arguments and seeing where all of us are to see how best we can reinforce our beliefs, reinforce our understanding, and also grow as a community and keep on advancing. And then pass it on to the other generations and pass it on to the people that we're serving. And it's a servanthood that when you're on that journey, you have to basically take good care of you. You fail in taking good care of you, um, does not necessarily means that you're failing in taking care of the sheep, because it just means that you're sacrificing so much for the sheep. The problem what's going to happen is that the sheep may end up going on and being shepherded by someone else because you become weary and you just edge out. You just can't handle it anymore. You're done, you know. And I have come to that place in my life, and I so agree with the national director. Like, if you're that person and you're serving in the ministry and you're have all this other stuff that's going on, you need to make some decisions, and wise decisions that's going to help propel that ministry in the right way. Like, for instance, like, how can you still be a single and you're a youth leader? You know, you're now a youth leader. You're serving youths, which is both boys and girls. And if you're a girl or a boy and you're still single at this point, you know what I mean? That you just still two groups, and you still need help, but there needs to be a balance. Because what happens when those girls start talking to this boy or male figure leader, and he's now giving them advice on how to be young ladies? The problem I have with that is, it's a major fallout, because giving guidance and sharing information based upon an arrived determination of how you've lived and how you've been through your life, that's one way of viewing life. But every time you take the stance of, whereas, oh well, she, I could talk to women or men or whatever, and blah blah blah, and help them through whatever they're going through. I'm like, without a female in the room, without a female that's there making sure that you are protected, without, because you still got the parents, these are young persons going through puberty, and then you have the young adult females who might want to not share information with a male. They need to talk to a female. But here's the thing on that subject. I am 100% okay with them talking to females. I am 100% okay talking to females. Because my thing is, I need them to get help, and the right help. I don't need them to get misdirected or misguided. I'm presenting the information, I'm giving them guidance, I'm sharing the truth, but and also in respect, but at the same time, I want to be sure that I've covered all of my decks. Make sure all my T's are crossed. Make sure all my X's and O's are where they're supposed to be. I don't want to be in a place where I am making steps and I'm doing this stuff alone. I'm doing it without a secretary. I'm doing it without an assistant. I'm doing it without a assistant director. I'm doing it without understanding what the leadership, national director wants to see happen with the youths and our participations and stuff like that. I'm doing it without informed judgment or the adult leaders, the senior pastor, the associate pastor, deacon, deaconess. I'm not hearing from these other leaders, the lay ministers, the evangelists. I'm not even hearing from the community of the church, the members, hearing where their heart is and what they want to see happen in the community, what they really want. You know, I'm not hearing it. You know, and that is where I have to draw the line and say, look, you need help, and you need to be honest about needing help and wanting people to assist and take part and stuff like that. Today I was supposed to ask some of the youths about taking on a few more roles in the ministry, and I didn't get to do that quite, but we have a social this week, and so I'm looking forward to that. And that's an opportunity where they get to unwind, they get to share, and have all the fun in the world they want to have and stuff like that, and have something to do that's interesting. That's just not a one off, but it's something that they can continuously talk about, and then they could say, "Hey, can we do this again?" And I will say yes to that. Yes, we can do this again. But now I want you guys to get to a place where you know a little more of the Bible and the stories. And I want to hear more about the Bible stories. I really want to hear more of you saying that, I read this book this day. I read this. I learned this. I learned that. I want to see that, and I want to see more of it. My encouragement is this: every ministry may be different, every walk may be different, but the point that I was making with the different religion and having that conversation and presenting that argument, it is just to increase your knowledge so that your reason why now has even a stronger foundation. And most people think that if I start studying about another religion, look, my thing is, portions of what I try to interest me in studying more about, the Muslim religion and stuff like that, not knowing that I have information on it. I've have studies on it. I've did quite a lot of research on it, and I have friends who are that. But then I also have friends who, Jewish friends who've been, you know, persecuted, and persons are really close to me that if I was in that group, taking some kind of course and talking about doing missions and XYZ, those persons who have been affected in that way, not necessarily would frown upon my actions in that regard. Not to say that they don't have respect for me, but I think it would still kind of be like a hurt to them knowing what they've endured and what they've been through, and how that's affected them, especially after 9/11 and more in that regard. And the ones that we've lost during the war, colleagues, that I know of, and other persons. And um, it's not an easy thing to accept, but the reality is, and I just try to say this as plainly and respectfully, the reality is that we have to just take consideration to take a step back, that maybe not tap into everything from that direct relationship standpoint, but go further back, go further deeper to get the records right, to know where the facts are from where they ain't. And when you realize where the facts are from where they ain't, then you start to understand why a certain group of people hate a certain group of people. Because maybe that certain group of people know more of the truth about the certain group of people, and the illusion that we've all been living in, that the certain group of people have designed, and they learned from the predecessors, and they spent a good amount of time designing and crafting it and using the same guidance that they received from their predecessors on how to rule and how to do it in a singular way. And now a lot of people who are coming into way more broader form of education, and then based upon the technology that's out there, you have more access readily and available information to you. You realize that now, wow, Jesus, I have more reasons to doubt. I have more reasons to doubt. I literally have facts now. I really have positions of argument that cannot be refuted. I can present them, and I know these arguments can't be refuted. I'm telling you it. I know it. I don't know it because I haven't tried it. I know it because I've searched it out. I see other people present arguments similar to that still have not yet to be answered. And they wonder why young adults are not connected to the gospel as much as they used to be. And it's the reality check that they're going through right now is that there are unanswered questions. And there are questions that people, even scholars and theologians, can't answer with facts and physical evidence. They can't. And so that's why they use the whole scheme, and I call it a scheme, of can you see the wind as it blows? Can you see the electricity? Can you see can you see all this stuff or whatever the case may be? And my whole thing about that, even that in itself, is still it's a reason to say, well then that if that is true for your religion, why can't it be true for mine? Because you're saying my guy died. And I'm saying that, yes, of course he died, because we all do. And historically, that's the truth. They do die. This is evidence of that, them dying. And it's like, oh no, but my guy rose again. And then you only have the account of people who are spreading this new religion, this new form of whatever that apparently aligns with the other designs by other cultures that formulated into one agenda to keep us focused on one final story. It's well written, and people say, "Oh, it's just a book. It's just a story." I never. I'm not taking that stance. I'm very clear on where I stand when it comes to the Bible and what it is and the codes, the messaging that's in there, the historical data that reflects truth. Well, people are just not listening. It's been saying it the entire time. We've just not been reading it the way it's been read, or been reading it the way that it's been written for us to understand it as it is, as a build up, as it's designed to describe life and how life, evolves. Life is messy. And there's no distance from the mess to how righteous you can live holy, that you will not experience mess. When you're on the road with Jesus, you're going through the messes. And the messes are ugly. They're not the most beautiful messes that you go through, but messes are ugly. Um, but let me take this moment to just say thank you guys again for listening to this podcast. Thank you for taking another step and another day and listen to this podcast. I don't want to go so deep because I think a lot of young believers, especially those who just started doing their studies recently. And, for me, I've been doing studies since I was a kid, and I had questions from when I was young. I spent more than maybe 20 years, not just getting A's on theologian questions and being some of the best debaters about Christian faith and why we ought to believe in Jesus and stuff, but I've also done my research well enough to understand a few things. And I stopped the deeper dive once I reached a certain state. And the reason why I stopped the deeper dive, and a lot of people don't, I picked it up, a few years ago, like 7 years ago, but it was about maybe 10 years ago or more. Maybe it was 15 years ago. Yeah, possibly close to 15 years ago. I stopped the deeper dive, and I stopped the deeper dive simply because of two factors. One, I knew it was, I could see, I felt it. I knew it was going to head into a direction that I was not ready to accept the truth and the answers that were coming to me. And I knew at the stage that I was at, it wasn't that fragile. I was pretty strong in my faith and everything, but I did not want it to be that at that level of discouragement. Um, And when I wrote the book, The Reason for Your Love, that book is not about self discovery and all that other stuff. That book really truly is telling you a story and teaching you about systems. Um, and if you for relationships, yeah, relationships and telling a beauty story, sorry about relationships and painting a picture, but I'm also talking about systems and how to succeed in those systems and how those operations of systems work so well when you follow the math, when you follow the design. And at the end of the day, the number one thing you learn is that you are still technically a slave to a system and a design that is a part of a program. And I left that part out of it because I wanted to tell a love story and paint a picture towards Jesus and being in a focused situation of reconciliation and loving people and coming back to love in a new way. And then there are other books like Restored, Treasured, and so many other books. And now the new book, Beyond Servitude. I just released my new book, Beyond Servitude. I hope you guys check it out. And I'm super excited. I'm stoked because I got some new music that's dropping. We wanted to kind of release it the end of this month. Oh, it's so nerve wracking right now. Really wanted to push the release at the end of this month, but we're just I'm just thankful for everything that's going on and just using wisdom, using my mind and my brain cells, asking the Lord to come in and just do magic and work his magic. My thing right now too is this. For anybody who is getting a bit discouraged. Um, One of the things that I heard in the message today, which is some of the things I've written in the book is like on the road with Jesus is a decision that you have to make every day. You're not just making it because somebody called you and said, Kingsley, you need to get on the road with Jesus Day. It's good to get that kind of motivation or reminder when you're already doing it. But when you're not doing it or you've not been a part of it in a while or you're extremely discouraged and you've taken a spot of rest or you have all these other personal things going on in your life and you're saying that I don't think this message of on the road to Jesus relates to my life journey, but it does because it's a center, it's a centerpiece, it's the thing that's going to keep you um emotionally centered, spiritually centered, even in your meditation and your health. And that's the thing that keeps you balanced. And then now you know how to respond to family issues when they come up. You still can be present for those family issues. You still can be present for those community activities and try to be. And then when you can't be, you understand why you can't be because your demands and your life have shifted. And the people who are around you also understand that. And they have an understanding about the commitments that you have. And so, with that understanding and that peace, you just keep making steps to keep moving forward, not getting discouraged. And sometimes you will get discouraged. Sometimes you will get to a place where you're just going to want to give up and never look back again. And my encouragement to you, my encouragement to those who've been serving for years is keep on going. We need you. We need your gifts. We need your encouragement. You are amazing, and we love that you're serving. Maybe you don't have all the resources. Maybe it's limited, but we thank you for everything that you've given into this, and we hope that it will give back. It will give back and abundantly. And that's it. That's my talk. We were here. You came here. You listened to the Love and Worship podcast with your host again, Kingsley Kase, and I hope you enjoyed it. But I would definitely beg to say that please stick around, stay tuned for more action, more updates from me, and more releases. And as they come, they'll come. And as they drop, they'll drop. I just want you guys to be encouraged and not to lose faith. Until then, grace, peace, and love.
Oh, you got the desires. Yes, you got all the ones. But what you do when they're gone? Where do you run from the storm?